Hey guys, Jeremy here at my way MFG. Raining cats and dogs outside. But if you've been watching the videos for a while, you'll remember a couple years ago I fixed a roof. So it's dry in here. The next forecast weather for the next week, it's supposed to be hotter than the hubs of hell. 90, 100 degrees. It's real nice out today, except for the rain. But I'm dry. I'm thinking maybe we'll try to get a little further with the back of this bike today on the BSA. Maybe get the chain on. I think the fender's got to get notched out a little bit for the chain. See if we can kind of get the position for the rear brake figured out. Stuff like that. And I've got a battery coming for the Sportster. It might be here today. It's coming in the mail. We'll see. But anyway, let's see what we can do here. Got this chain put together. I took my tensioners clear to the end so I'd have plenty of adjustment. Figure if I'm making up a chain anyway, I might as well get as much out of it as I can. This is a pretty telltale sign that this bike's never been put together. The chain rubs the fender. So I've pulled the fender up into the position where it should go, and I've put a couple marks on there. I'm going to try to notch that out and then see if we can get this fender mounted permanently. As I look at the back right now, it doesn't look like the sissy bar is quite centered. So I think we'll get all this off, get the wheel centered in the frame, and then use it as a guide, and we'll grind and weld and do whatever we got to make all this straight. And get the clearance for the chain, see where we go from there. A little tip when you're taking these chains apart, you know, you grind the head off of the rivet here on the pin so you can drive it out. But go ahead and grind it off on both sides. It helps that pin release easier. This chain had been laying around here. I didn't do this, but somebody at some point had tried to take it apart there and see what happened. After that starts to bend like that, you have a hell of a time getting it out. And if you grind that off on both sides, you got a much better chance of that not happening. But anyway, I got another problem. Something just didn't look right with that sissy bar. After I got the fender off, this hole in the center is nowhere close to being in the center of the wheel. Then I got to looking. The center of the wheel doesn't line up in the center of the backbone to the frame. It's off to this side. So if I take a quick measurement, from that side to the center tread is about 3 7/8. Coming off the other side, it's about 5. So that wheel should come this way a little over 1/2 inch, but it cannot. There's no spacers or nothing to take out, and there's no way I can move that over that I can see. And if I look at the chain is running straight, and if I spin the wheel, the teeth are falling right in the center of the chain. So I don't see any way to fix that. The chain's going to work fine the way it is, but this wheel's offset to one side. It's going to kind of be a, what would you say, a dog tracker? I wonder if anybody else has ever run into this problem. It might be that this wheel just wasn't meant to be used with this frame. If I had spacers on this side, I could take out and get it over, but then it would throw my chain alignment off. So I don't know where to go with that. really don't know what to do. I could slot some holes in the sissy bar in the back fender and probably get it to look better so you don't really see it. But other than trying a different wheel, I don't know what else the guy could do to fix that. So now another couple problems I have here that I've noticed. I've tightened up the chain tensioners and I've got the chain adjusted, and I'm pretty well the same on each side. So that's pretty much where all that goes. Got about the right amount of slack in the chain. Problem is, the chain can bounce off the bottom of the oil tank. And I'm thinking I probably am going to have to re-drill these holes, cut the bottom off these tabs, and see if I can get the oil tank to come up a little ways. Even if I could get a ½ an inch out of it, it might be enough. If that don't work, I might just have to cut these tabs off and re-weld them higher. I was going to put the ignition switch right here in between the frame and the oil tank. I'm glad I hadn't done that yet, because that's going to have to get to a different location now, because I'd like to see this come up at least a ½ an inch. I've got pretty good clearance at the front of that, but not at the back. And there's no real good way to just tip that up. I would have to end up with shims in here or something. So I think the easier thing is probably just lift the whole thing. So we got to do that. The next problem is the back sprocket's good. The front sprocket, it's riding up on the teeth. So this front sprocket is wore out. It's going to need replaced. And the reason that never gets done is because putting a front sprocket on a BSA is not an easy affair. I've done it before. You've got to pull the clutch basket out to do that. And the last one I had, last BSA I had, was doing this exact same thing. And I ran that front sprocket until I just couldn't run it anymore. And then it come to the point I had to do it. And this one's going to be no different. We're going to have to come up with a front sprocket for that here eventually. But you can hear it. So anyway, bunch of problems here right now. I think for right now, first thing I'm going to do, I've got a line drawn on this fender. I'm going to get it notched out, see if I can get it back in place, and see if I can at least clear it, you know. As I think about it though, this wouldn't really be dog tracking, would it? It wouldn't be like the rear end shifting in a car, you know, and the whole thing going down the road sideways. You'd still be going down the road straight. It would just be your front and back tire weren't tracking down the same center line. That wouldn't really matter too much, right? Anyway, I've notched this fender out. Let me show you. I've took off quite a lot, and at the present moment, I'm thinking I'd like to have just a little more top clearance right here. Kind of the same situation as the oil tank, you know, it's just real close. And then down here, I'm still too tight. So I'm gonna take this off and cut it one more time. And I think I can get that. This is all tightened up into position now, pretty close. And I was looking, back here it's not centered up quite over the tire, but when I go to tighten that bolt up, if I was to put a shim there and just tweak this a little bit that way, let me show you. I think a guy could just do that and get it to look pretty good, maybe. You know? I think that'll work. Anyway, I'm gonna pull this back off and cut it one more time. Here at the bottom, I just pushed a chain up here about as high as it could ever, you know, stretch up to. I'm just gonna put a mark here and just do this instead of redoing that whole line. And then up here, we're just gonna get it a little higher, quite a bit higher. I'm gonna go clear up to there with it. So it'll be that, and then another notch here. And then we'll just leave this line alone. All right, I've taken the fender back off and I've notched it again. And I made a separate notch down there for the lower part, so it's missing by a long shot now. Up top, we got plenty of clearance there too. So I'm pretty happy with all of that. I got the fender bolted on completely tight. We're not close to hitting anything. I hadn't noticed this rear wheel being offset until today when I took the fender off. And now that I've put the fender back on, it's hard to notice when you got the fender on. I'm thinking that's just one of them situations where it is what it is, and you just got to go with it. This is all down there good and tight now. I could maybe tweak that and just maybe try to bend it a little bit, but it really ain't that noticeable now. So anyway, I think the only other thing I got to do, I want to lift this oil tank up a little bit still, because that's just so close right there. And I feel like every once in a while that's just gonna, as the chain tightens up, you know, it's gonna hit that. And the last thing you'd want to do is rub a hole in your oil tank. If I can just get this up a little bit, I think I'd feel better about it. Because, I mean, that's how much clearance we've got there now. Just a little more would make me happy. So I think I'm gonna drill a couple holes as close as I can up here and still have a nut work under the frame tube. Cut the bottoms of these tabs off and just see if this whole thing will come up. All right, got the oil tank dropped out of there, and I've drilled 5/16 holes above the old ones. Reason I said earlier I didn't know if I'd have to re-weld the tabs. I didn't know if I'd have enough material down here on the bottom to get a 5/16 hole, but I did. So I'm gonna whack this off on the bottom on both sides, and see if I can get that to lift up. That should give us quite a bit more, I think. All right, that worked out good. That brought us up quite a bit, and I got pretty good clearance there now. I would think that would probably be about all I'm gonna get out of it, and that should never hit that, I don't think. So the back of this is pretty well all buttoned up now, and back to working on the brake. I'm thinking I'm gonna try to get a brake stay rod to go from here on the rear brake hub down to this hole here. That's a pretty long piece, and I had this here that's good thick stuff, probably thicker than it needs to be, but it wasn't quite long enough. But if I weld this to the end of it, then it is. So I'm gonna do that and start making up a piece to go back there, at which point we should be able to work on the linkage rod again. All right, I got that brake stay rod on, and it's too thick to get a nut on. I think I'm still going to use it. I'm just going to grind it down, make it thinner right there where the nut goes, and we'll round off these edges and stuff. But I just got it clamped down here for now. I still got to drill the other hole. I want to make sure that's the location I want, and at the present moment I think it is. So we'll get that on there for good here at some point. I've came up here, I've ground this back at an angle so the pedal rests against it. I've just got a couple tack welds on there. Some of the 5/16 round rod, we'll cut it off right here and then plug weld a washer to the end of it. Might cut a little groove in that so that spring goes down a little better. And then back here I've just welded a 1/4 inch nut, and then we'll grind off and cut away all this. It's not necessary, but that puts a spring on my brake pedal, and that's working good. So we'll finish buttoning that up, get it dressed up, make it look nice. A brake light switch, I'm thinking I'm probably gonna put in this area right here between the fender and the oil tank and kind of hide it back here behind the frame rail. That would put my wiring close to everything. And I was gonna try to figure out a way to get it up in here, but it might be too close to the exhaust. It's plastic, you know. Plus it'd be more likely to get damaged up there, and it's a long way to run wire. So I think back in there maybe with that. But anyway, this is all coming together, I think, and I think I'm gonna go in for the night. Next time come out here, maybe get a little further. I'm gonna get this brake rods threaded up. We got the chrome one here, and we got the other one that's not chrome. Be nice to have another chrome one, but we go to several swap meets a year, and I can keep my eye out for things like that. See a piece of that laying around, we buy it, you know. There's several things like that I might be looking for at the next swap meets. But anyway, I got a 5/16 18 thread count, and I picked up a coupler to fit that, so let's thread the ends of both of these. Got my oil there, and see if we can get this brake a little more mocked up today. All right, I got that threaded. I screwed a 3/8 nut on there we can use for a jam nut. I would put that about halfway down the coupler. So let's just screw that on until it backs up to that nut. Also put a 3/8 nut on this one for a jam nut. So let's get these screwed together. That looks pretty good. We're clearing the oil tank with it, and push the brake pedal down. Everything moves that direction. So let's start mocking up something back here. The problem I ran into back here, this is a brake actuator lever for a BSA. If I put it on here, let me try to get the camera right. It heads straight towards that sissy bar rod. See what I mean? It needs to be offset to the back. So anyway, I had this one here that was off a Japanese bike, which does offset to the back, but it doesn't have the right splines to fit on the shaft. If it did, it would work, but it doesn't. So I had thought about cutting the end off this and getting it welded into here, and then I could use that. But I've also got this. I don't know what this came off of, but at the present moment I'm thinking of doing that. But I thought I would take like a piece of 1/4-inch pipe, sleeve the inside of that, and just weld it on there so that that bolt's just going through a sleeve rather than just the 2 holes. But I'm gonna mock it up like this for now and just see how it works. And then if that all seems like it's working out okay, I'll just weld a short piece in between there. And then on the end of this, we could probably use like a nylon lock nut so that can rotate in there. Or we could put a washer and drill it and put a pin in it. But for right now, I'm just gonna stick it on like this and see if I wanna see if I've got my tab welded long enough up there to fully actuate the brake. If not, I might have to weld a longer tab on the brake pedal. But let's just see if it works for now. Guys, that all worked, what I did here, except for with that short actuator piece on here to hook this rod into. I had it going underneath here. There was enough movement in the brake pedal to engage the brake. Only problem was when you pushed it down, this rod was rubbing on the engine case right here. So I just made up a longer tab. I'm gonna cut that one off and weld this one on here, and that should put this up to about here. And that gives us plenty of clearance. The other issue was, let me move the camera. When you push the brake pedal down, that spring bottoms out on that. So I'm gonna cut this peg back off and weld it up here. That should solve that problem. And this could stand to have a little bit more tension on it. The reason I made that so short to begin with is that spring looked real heavy to me, and I didn't know if it would have much, I didn't know how far that spring would pull out, you know, without distorting it. But that spring's not as heavy and strong as I thought it was. So we'll move this pin up here, then we'll weld a washer to the end of that, maybe cut a little groove in it right there, and then cut this tab off back here and get the longer one on it. Otherwise, that's all working. Back here, I had just enough clearance to clear the oil tank without rubbing. So that's all good. This worked out well. When you get back here, where they've got these two pieces overlapped for this sissy bar, it rides right above that. So that worked out perfectly without rubbing. I welded a big thick washer on here for a backstop for that spring, and I'll probably grind the diameter of that down so it's not so big around, but I wanted to use that because it was thick. So we'll get that shaped up. I wasn't able to put a very long spring on here to adjust the brakes because when this pulls, it's gonna hit this bar. So I couldn't come clear up to here with it. I had to keep it back here pretty short. But this hair's got teeth in it all the way around, so it's fully adjustable. So you should be able to get your major brake adjustment done by repositioning this and then just fine tune it with that. You got, you know, a ½ inch of movement there anyway. And then we got to cut the end of that off and thread it all the way down so we can get a nut on there for a backstop, and still got to sleeve this. But it's all working, and it looks good. So I was worried about, I had 2 of these different springs that go around here and you know, go around that. Neither one of them worked. And I got to researching these springs, and they're being called brake pedal return springs. Brake pedal return springs, right? So I think all they really do is bring your brake pedal up, which we've got that here. So I started looking at a couple other bikes I've got around here, because I thought maybe those had to be on there to keep your brakes from chattering or something. But you know, your brake shoes have the 2 heavy springs in between them. That should take care of all that. And these are being called brake pedal return springs. So if we look at the Harley has one back here, but that's the only spring it's got. It doesn't have a spring on the brake pedal. This is ran off a cable. The only spring on here is this little one that pulls the brake light switch. So in this instance, that is the brake pedal return spring. And then if we go inside and look at the Yamaha does not have one up here, but it has one there. Once again, brake pedal return spring. So we're essentially doing this setup like this. No spring back here, but one up here, right? Seems to me that should be fine. We're just gonna try it, and if it works good, there's no reason to change it, right? If something happens and it chatters or something doesn't seem quite right, we'll go back to it. And even if I did have the right spring, neither one of these are right, but even if I did have the right one, it locks into this hole right here. You know, this isn't the right one, but it would go in that hole, and then it would come up and catch the brake rod. But you would have to be in the factory location with this, or close to it, right? And I doubt this is the factory location. That could have been coming down, or, you know, who knows. But I'm just doing it in a way that works best for me. So even if I did have the right spring, it probably wouldn't work in this application. So anyway, that's where we're at with all that. I think it's going to be just fine. Oh, and one other thing here that I was going to mention. I would be a little bit worried if something ever came loose, this would fall down into the chain. And with the chain going that way, it'd catch it and probably make a hell of a mess. So I thought what I might do, I've got this U-clamp here. I might take something like that, cut it down to length on the back side of that sissy bar, this side shorter and this side longer, and just weld that in there on the back of that. That way that could never fall and go anywhere. And there's not much movement here. I held this up here and tried it, and I can do that and everything clears good. And I think that might be a good thing to do right there. So we'll probably do that. This sissy bar isn't tight yet. In the position where they've got this hole drilled here for the fender, the seat does not fit. And I realized if I move this sissy bar back and tilt it back more, then all that just falls into place. And the fender follows the wheel diameter better too. It brings it down in the back. So I got to re-drill this hole like back in here, and then all that fits right. So we still got to do that. And then here they had bolts with Allen wrench ends in them, Allen head bolts. It is really hard to get in there and tighten them with an Allen head wrench. Whereas if I just had hex head bolts there, I could tighten them right up. So these two bolts are going to get replaced with just hex head bolts. Anyway, I'm going to say these forward controls are pretty well mocked up, other than just buttoning up some loose ends here. So I imagine in the next video, we have all that done. We take them off and just start finishing off the welds and kind of taking a little filler and smoothing them out and get a little paint on them, because I don't want them just rusting, you know. So we'll just put a little black paint or something on them for now. And then while those are off, we can get the exhaust all buttoned up and probably about ready to mount the seat and do the wiring and get the front tire on and a couple cables. Getting real close to a test drive with this, probably. A couple more videos, maybe. Well, guys, as you often hear me say, I think this video is getting long enough, so I'm going to end it here. Got a long way with this. It's pretty well done, all but loose ends. One thing I was worried about is this BSA hadn't been leaking any oil. That didn't seem right. I walked out here this morning and there was a puddle underneath of it, so I was glad to see that. That's how you can tell it's different from a Honda, you know. So, and you always know you got oil. As long as it's leaking, it must have a little bit in it anyway. So we'll keep an eye on that. Next video, forward controls I think will be finished, maybe even painted. We'll get the exhaust clamp things on and the exhaust all buttoned up, and I'm thinking maybe start the wiring. At which point we're getting real close. The battery came for the Sportster. It's inside. I got to pour the acid in it, put it on the charger, and if the weather's good tomorrow, I'm probably going to take that for a ride. Maybe we'll film a little bit of that if I can figure out how to do it. I have to figure out a way to hold or mount a camera somewhere. I don't know. We might try. That'd be a cool video though, maybe. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, guys. Thanks for following along. Please like, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't already. We'll catch you on the next one. Later, Jeremy.